So today will hopefully be the last day of Launchpad, and at the end we can start breaking you guys up into groups, depending on how far we get. We're going to be finishing up the project create form and then abstracting it into an edit form. Yeah. So there's a few things that have been changed since yesterday. Namely, images is an object with a file object, or a file with a file in it. It's an array of that. This is so that our use field array. I am recording. Yes. This is because the use field array method that we use for our lists in our forms takes in a array of objects. So you can't just pass in a primitive type. So for those of you, I'm going to quickly catch people up. We've been developing this form. Is that too small? Also, why is it not on like every screen? I feel like it should be. Also, the lights are kind of mid. How do I change the lights? Let's see. This thing. Mood lighting. Oh, that's all the way off. There's no labels on these. Okay. All right, I guess that's as good as I'm going to get it. Yeah, so we're going through our form. Some notable components that we're using are the NER form modal, which is something that you guys have been provided with. This is basically an abstracted. Does everybody know what a modal is, what it looks like? You guys have all used modals. If you've ever used an app or anything that you ever had to probably enter in information. It's basically like a pop-up that appears on the screen that allows you to, it could either be like a warning that's like, warning, you're about to delete something, and then you have to press OK. But it's basically, a way to get the user's attention really quickly without having a dedicated screen for it. Other notable components, so we use form controls with form labels and then controller. These are all components taken from React Form Hook, which is a library we're using for our forms. We talked about how they work last time, so I'm not going to go over that exactly. You can see it's a very repeatable pattern. If you wanted, especially with the text field in finish line, we have a component that kind of abstracts this a little bit more. So the first time that we use the use field array is with the skills, which are a little bit more basic than the images. And basically, the way that it works from a higher level architecture design is you still have your form control and you still have your form label, but you basically have one section for your added elements and then one section for adding a new element. So we render our already added skills here. And skills is being tracked through our form. We talked about that last time. And then we see we're just supplying a text field that allows the users to edit the individual skills. And then we also supply a button to be able to remove the skills. And we'll see what that looks like when we start up the application. And then we have, outside of that loop, a individual add skill button that just appends a new skill to be rendered inside of this array right here. And the last thing that we need is our images, which is going to follow the same pattern of, rendering the added images and then having a button to add a new image, but it's going to be a little different because we're working with files and not text. So I actually have it right now here in case I forget exactly how to do it, but we're going to start with adding a new append for append image, remove for remove image, and then fields as images. And what is this syntax called in TypeScript or JavaScript, actually? Yeah. So we're getting these values from this use field array method, and we're able to just access them straight from that using the object destructuring method in TypeScript or syntax in TypeScript. And then you rename the default values to whatever value you actually want it to be called. Otherwise, these values would contradict each other or would duplicate each other. You're able to specify them in this way with this syntax. So we're going to follow a very similar pattern as the skills, where we're going to start with a grid. This will be an item as well. With our XS equals 12. What does XS an item mean for the grid component? Talked about this yesterday as well.
It's dictating the behavior if it's like an extra small screen.
Yeah, and 12 means what?
It's like the whole screen.
Yeah, it's the whole screen because the grid container element has 12 columns that it separates whatever section of the screen it has into. So yeah, when you specify that you're taking up 12 columns, it's going to take up as much area or as much width as the grid container that this item is in has. After that, we're going to add our form control. Oops. Just going to be full width. Inside the form control, we have our form label, which for us is going to be images. And then we're going to have another grid, but this is going to be a container for our images. And in here, we're going to say images dot map. What does the map do? And does what? You said it iterates through every element in the list. Yeah. So yeah, it basically transforms this array into something else. Whatever you return as an individual element in the callback that you supply. So you take in the individual image and then the index. And in here, this is where we're going to render the individual image. And for us, we don't want to render the whole image. We just want to render a box that has, we're just going to say like an H4. And the H4 is going to have the image.file.name. So what is that doing right now? Anybody? What would this look like?
Does it return the name of the image file?
Yeah, and it's basically just being shown by the other images as well. However, this is going to be a container. Could make this a grid item. And then we're just going to make that XS be 12 as well, but it doesn't really matter. And then the other thing that we want is our icon button for deleting it, which is going to just be remove image with index. All right. And now the next part we have to do is very specific to images. But we're basically going to have a button that is going to have the text like upload. And then it's also going to have a native input. So it's just straight HTML. That's type is going to be file. And it's going to accept, I think you can just say like PNG, comma, JPEG, comma, PDF, although it might be something more specific. Let me check. Oh, image slash PNG, image slash JPEG, image slash PNG. We'll leave it there for now. This is going to be hidden because it's just going to be rendered by the button. And then on change, we're going to take this element, which is an HTML element, and we're going to do e.target.files.for each. I think you just say for each. Actually, yeah, for each. Ooh, it does not like this. Does not exist. What do I do? I do. Oh, okay. You're going to transform this into an array using this special little array destructuring syntax. What is this episode about? Oh, and you're also going to type check it first so that you know it is not null. So everybody understand this syntax is very common. No? All right, this syntax is basically, this is called a null check. And it can either be where you have an if statement. Everything in TypeScript is either truthy or falsy if you pass it into a if statement. The way that you check for null items is by having an if item. If that is true, then you know that it is not null. If it's false, then you know that it probably is null. So if we're inside of the if statement, that means that e.target.files cannot possibly be null, or else you would hit the else statement. You can also do like guards. So we kind of do a guard here where we say if is loading, return this, otherwise render the full thing. But you could like say like if not null, return that as well. But it doesn't like that because of linting. But yeah, that's just called a type check or an unwrap kind of syntax. I don't know what the exact name for it is. But it's basically just checking that the item that you're going to be accessing inside the if statement is not null. Right here. So now we have a file. And with this file, we can basically do the exact same thing here where we're going to append an image where our file is actually just file. And this is called shorthand syntax. So this is equivalent to if two things are the same name, this is equivalent to just doing that as well. In TypeScript, you could just leave it like that. Yeah. And so that's how we're going to be adding that. We can also style this. So like to make it green, you can say like variant equals success, I believe, or type equals success. No, oh yeah, color equals success. Color equals success. Variant equals contained. And then like you can add like a little icon like this. Add the start icon. And so now if we start our app, hopefully I'm not forgetting anything major. I don't think I am. And we go to Launchpad, we sign in, we add a project. We're going to be able to say like new project, new description. Just going to say this is our URL. We're going to add a skill. Let's just say Python. Add another skill. Let's say TypeScript. Doesn't like that. I think I need to add this component label here. I think I forgot that. Let's see. Hopefully it's that. Yeah, it's that. You need the component label if you're going to nest the button there. And now let me see. Say our sim is our project. Also, we want those on the same line. So we're going to say display is going to be flex, then line items center. We'll say vertical align middle. I think those like kind of do the same thing, but there we go. Now that looks better. And hopefully if we submit now, Prisma client validation error, client version 5.15.0. So we got a backend error here. Let me make this bigger because I can't even see that. It does not like the way we have uploaded skills. Expected. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, something you guys are gonna have to do in your project.apis. I forgot to mention this. When you create the project, whenever you upload a file, there is a certain way that Multer, which is the file manager that we have on our Express app, expects the data. It expects it as a multi-part / form data, which is set in your header. If you actually look at your network and then go to your responses, you'll see that the request type is multi-part / form. I can actually show you that. So we can see our request header. See, our content type is multi-part / form data. However, if we look at like a normal request, our content type should be application / JSON. If we specify anything, yeah. Well, we accept application / JSON. But if you were to upload something like without an image, it would typically be application / JSON. But in this case, it's multi-part / form data, and it has to be uploaded that way. In which case, you're only allowed to upload either strings or files. And the way you do that with TypeScript is you use this form data class, and then you append your value with your, or you depend your, your key with your value for everything. And then your images, you can iterate through each of them and call form data.append on images, image.file. And what that'll do is that will either, if it doesn't exist, add the new key images with the first file. If it does exist, it will append that to the existing images already. And then we also have to JSON.stringify our skills, because skills is an array of strings right now. And we need it to be, or it's an array of objects that have a name that is a string. And we actually need that to just be an array of strings. So we're actually going to map this to just be skill.name. And that's what's going to fix our error there. Yeah, and then you want to make sure that you're actually uploading the form data and not the project data. Does anybody have any questions on this? It's kind of complicated. It's kind of just like how it's kind of a networking thing that we don't really have control over. You just have to conform to that.
Could you read?
Sorry?
Could you re-explain form data?
Yeah, so when you pass in form data to this Axios.post, Axios is automatically going to infer that the HTTP request type that goes over the internet to our backend is going to set the header for your content type to be multi-part / form data. If you just pass in like a JSON object to this Axios.post method, it's going to just send it as application / JSON because that's what it is. So by using the form data class, you're setting that header, which allows the Express app to infer it in that way, and Multer to be able to parse out the images, which we can see here. We say upload.array images, and upload is a function that you guys have that is from Multer. You don't really have to worry about this, but if you're curious about how file uploads work with Multer, it's kind of like this, and this stores the images in our uploads folder. So you'll see here, I have all of these images. This is the one I just uploaded, and it's stored literally on my computer right now because I'm on localhost. So it's just referencing stuff on my computer. It's actually storing it on there. So if this was running on a server somewhere, it would be stored on that server, and you're able to reference it from that server URL. It's kind of complicated, but what you just have to worry about is the protocol you have to conform to is this multi-part / form data. And you do that by declaring this form data here. And you have to know that everything either has to be a string or an array. A string or an image, sorry. A string or an image or a file. Okay, so now that we've done that, and I add as project, description, do this, add skill. Oh, I guess that's another bug that we could fix, but it doesn't really matter. TypeScript. I'm going to do that image again. I like that image. Ooh, or this image. And we submit. There it is. Now added that to our screen. So there we go. Now, if you ever want to add a new project to your website, all you have to do is that, and it'll work, and it'll show it just like this. I'm going to stop. Anybody have any questions? Anybody? Does everybody understand how this just happened? Like, how the hell is this even getting this right now? Or is this just kind of like magic? Because you guys have coded everything here to make this happen. So hopefully it kind of demystifies it a little bit. But please ask me questions if you don't understand any of this. All right. There's no questions. We'll go into editing. This is cool because it's just abstraction. We really should not have to add any more React code, which is good because I'm not good at front end. So we have this project form, and right now it's only able to be used for editing, but we want to be able to use it for creating things and editing things. So we're going to make 2 new files called project createform.tsx and project editform.tsx. And also, I'm kind of annoyed that that still happens with. So in order to get the, this will not make it when you actually create the project. It won't hide it. It won't. Oh, wait. Another thing I want to show you. This makes it so that when you press submit and it succeeds, that modal goes away. It doesn't stay up like it did before. And I can show you that, but just trust me there. And I'll show you that in a second, actually. When we created the project, we saw that it automatically popped up here. Like you didn't have to refresh. You didn't have to do anything. It was just here. Does anybody know how that happened? Because that is not something that just happens on its own. Yes, but what state variable got changed? This is from, sorry? Technically, yes, but, okay, projects changed, why? You're right, project did change. But why did it change? Why when we press submit, like we showed you that code, like create project, the hook, the API, it just goes to the API and it calls the backend. But then there's nothing after create project that would, you know, make we don't edit the projects variable, so that everybody knows we don't edit this variable anywhere from the form. So how does it know to add this project? Tech leads? Do you guys know? I think anybody other than Sean is allowed to answer this question. When I created a new project, I didn't have to refresh my page or anything. The new project showed up here. How did that happen? It is not. It is not just React. We've added code to make this happen. I do not have a use effect. I didn't add a use effect. I don't think I've added a use effect yet. Have I? Let me phrase it maybe in a more leading way. How? Because these projects are not stored on the front end; they're stored in the back end in the database. How did the front end know to refetch the projects after we created a new one in the back end? No. I'll give you a hint. It's in. You can see it here. None of this is magic. What about it? Why? It does call on success after it successfully creates a new project. What does on success do? Where's the link between on success and requerying the database? It's like two. There's like one linkage here. Look for common strings. Yeah. So do you know how that works? Do you see what might cause those two things to be linked? It does. That's right. Do you see why though?
Does it just delete everything and refetch everything?
It does refetch everything, but what is causing the refetch here? It is this line. You're right. This line is causing the refetch. But why?
With the name, like invalidate queries projects means whatever time we use to use query with the key projects, that is now invalid. So you need to redo the query with that query key.
That is exactly invalidated. That's exactly right. Yes. So you see that up there. You see that project, the first projects. That's a query key. And so since we invalidate this query projects, that query is now no longer valid because we invalidated it. And so React Query knows to automatically refetch from our endpoint, from our API. But really doesn't know that. It just knows to call get projects again, which calls our API, which will then have the updated project because we created it in our database. So that's how that works. Does that make sense? All right, sweet. That's pretty much the most complicated we get in terms of using React Query. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And then to exemplify that a little bit further so that everybody understands, I'll change this to projects XD. And that might get mad at me. Look at that. Nothing showed up. There it is. So that's pretty cool. That would be a nightmare to do without React Query. Or it wouldn't be that bad, but it would be a lot of sludge to have to deal with. Okay. So back to the create form. The create form is just what this is now, but we're going to abstract this form to be able to use it for editing and creating. So we're going to declare function const project create form equals this. And this project create form is going to have it is going to have this function because it's the create function. It is going to have, that's fine. That's also fine. That's fine. I think it's just going to have that. Oh no, it's also going to have this. So this needs to take in so now that we've gotten rid of those two things, those two things are going to be declared here. Well, we know that these functions still need those values. So how is this function going to get them now?
Can we import the other thing?
Yeah. Where would we do that here? Yeah. Yeah, we would. We'd pass them in as props. So we pass in mutate async and we pass in default values. And we're going to give them a type. This is going to take in data, which is project form input, and do something with it. We don't really care. Actually, we do care that it's a promise. Default values is going to be of type project form input, I believe. Yeah. And then we can delete these two things. I didn't need those to begin with. Let's see. Oh, we also don't need that anymore. Well, you could keep it in there. I ain't sure. You can keep that, and we can pass that in as well. All right. And here we have our use create project. Let me import that. Our default values. And all we're going to do is return our project create form. Our project form with our default values as default values, our mutate async as mutate async, our is loading as is loading. This might get mad at me. Doesn't really matter. And then what else do we need? Do we need anything? Oh, we need open and on hide, which we're going to prop drill through like this. Open. type project is not assignable to type. Okay, well, that doesn't matter. I can change this to be project. Okay. People understand what I just did? It'll make more sense when we do the edit, because it's going to be pretty much exactly the same as this. Now we go to the edit form, copy and paste that. This is obviously the project edit form, not the, we're going to use edit project. Oh, we haven't made that yet. All right, so we'll have to make that. But we're still going to do that. And we also need to take in the existing project. Like that. And we talked about this last time, but what should the default values be now? We're editing the project. Yeah, exactly. They're just going to be the project.title. And we're just going to, for simplicity's sake, leave the images as they are. Actually, what we want is to also pass in the project.id here, so we don't have to worry about that later. Default values. Oh, right. But we need to skill. And this needs to be what? Talked about it in the beginning briefly. I'd be kind of surprised if people remembered. But we can read, well, we can read the error message, and it says type void star is not assignable to type name string. So what do we need in here? Do people think? Yeah. But we need to return it. Just like that. And now the only thing we have left to do is to define our edit project API and our edit project hook. All right, I'm going to take a second, though. Do people understand this abstraction? Does this make sense to people how this works? So what is the advantage of doing it this way?
You just use your leave that. But template.
Yeah. If I were to not abstract this, I'd have to write this entire, what is it? No, that's the wrong one. This entire 261 line file has now been abstracted to be used in two 30-line files. So that's a net gain of what, 200 lines of code that doesn't have to be repeated, right? Something like that, give or take, which is sweet. And it also makes it so that if I ever want to add a field to a project and I want that to be editable by the user, I just need to change one form and not both of them. It does come at a downside where if you want to like restrict access to certain elements when you're editing it versus when you're creating it, you kind of have to make exceptions for those values and add some ternary operators for whether or not you're going to render them. But that's kind of the trade-off between abstraction and not. So now we're going to edit project, which is going to also take in project data, which is going to be project form input. And then we're going to use some spicy syntax here and say ID string. So what do people think that this is doing? Or this, just typing. It's a little complicated. Not too complicated.
So project form
Exactly. It's going to have all the types, or it's going to have all the elements that project form input typically has, and then it's also going to have an ID. That's it. That's just what the little ampersand means. You could also define like a new interface, like project edit input. You can say that extends project form input, but it also has an ID of a string. That would be this and this type are synonymous. This and this, they're the same thing. Honestly, it's better practice to do it like this. But we're gonna basically do the exact same thing here. Except we're going to change this to be, we're going to add an edit project. Which is actually going to be a function that takes an ID and returns project plus, which I think it might be easier to do, $projects / $ID edit, I think is what the route is on. Yeah.
What's the $?
So this syntax, we use a backtick, so it's different than a regular quote or a single quote. When you use a backtick, you're able to use this syntax where you do $ and then open curly brace, and that allows you to insert JavaScript into a string. It's called string interpolation, I believe. It's the technical term. But yeah, it's basically just saying that you're going to insert the value of projects, which is just the base word on / projects, have a raw slash with the value of ID next, a slash, and then edit. And that's it. It's the exact same thing as doing projects plus slash plus ID plus edit, or plus slash edit. Yeah.
Where are the IDs being made?
So we're going to be passed in the ID. The IDs are automatically, you're talking about like in the back end or in the front end? Back end? So you're right. We never create the project with an ID. So the way that we get the ID is, if you look in our schema, we default it to a UUID, which is a universally unique identifier. So we don't have to specify it. The database will give us our ID for free. We don't have to specify that. It's the same reason we don't have to specify when it was created. And then if you do have it updated, you also don't have to specify that. It'll just know, depending on when you ever modify that row. All right, so now we're able to use our edit project and pass in our project data.id. And this should work as our API. Now we're going to go back to our hook, and we can see our APIs follow a very similar structure, and your experience APIs will also follow this very similar structure. The next thing we're going to do, copy and paste this, add an ID here. We're going to say use edit project, use mutation. This all looks good. And we're just going to await edit project. Then we're going to do a little mini transformer where we add the ID. And look at that. TypeScript is all happy. Is it slash update? Okay. Well, I might have something slightly different. But whatever your slash thing is, mine's just slash ID. I didn't even add edit. But I could also do slash update. Just for clarity's sake, it's just whatever that is, whatever that's matching. These two have to match. So yeah, that's good. Good that you noticed that. Yeah. And now our hook is done. Last thing to do, import it. Let's see. We're now going to make this the project create form, which is fine. And then inside our project card, we're just going to say whenever you click the card, we're going to display the edit for it. So we're going to add a const show edit project set show edit project use state false. So this is basically going to be our state for whether or not we're showing the modal. And then in here, well, we're going to add a little thing like that, just an empty element, because every React element has to only have one root in it. So before it was just the card, but now that we're adding, actually, I think I can just do project edit form and say open set. Oh wait, this is show edit project. Set show edit project false. That's going to hide it. And then the last thing we need is the actual project, which we get for free or passed in here. Let's see, why are we upset? Oh, yeah, we're no longer using that. There we go. A fully compiled app. Let's see if it works first try. Let's see, we're going to edit. Oh, I need to add an onClick to actually set that to be true. 1 second. We're going to say on. Do we have an onClick function here? No. I don't want to wrap this in a box, but I think I need to add. Wait, let me see. API. Ugh. I may have to. I don't know if this is going to break the UI, but I may have to do this. Just div. Classic div. All right, let's see if this broke my UI. Oh, that's the wrong thing. There we go. And look, it automatically fills in everything other than the images, of course. But now we can upload our image that has been empty for so long. Let's see. Let's do this little GIF, this image of the car. And then let's see if we can actually edit something. New description. New description. And look at that. It automatically refreshed as well. But we can see that there's like no spacing here. So let's add row spacing of like 2. That's much better, I think, in my opinion. And there's just a little spacing there. Yeah. And now if we wanted all 3 of those on the same row, you could say that, I think. Now they're all there, but it looks terrible. So I'm going to keep it as 4. All right. Like to drag them around? So that would actually be kind of complicated because I assume you would want to save the order that they are shown in. So that's a very good question. So this leads into other things. Future possible improvements to this. When I first made this, I had like a automatic image scroller. So like, you know, we defined in our schema that projects have multiple images, but we're only showing the first image right now. So when I did this, I had like a automatic scroller thing for each image. So like it would just like carousel through each one periodically. which I thought was kind of cool. Other thing is like, yeah, if you wanted to specify ordering, you would actually, this would actually be much more complicated than you would think. You would have to edit your schema to keep track of like the index that you want it to appear in. That would pretty much be the only thing you'd have to add. But yeah, you'd specify that index, and then whenever you dragged it around, you would make a new. You could make like a new endpoint that was like update project card index, and it would just edit that, just like how the normal edit project works, but just for that specific index. You know, you can either invalidate the query to have it reload, or you probably want it to just be front end rendered automatically and not re-query, because that will cause it to load again. Yeah, and then there's certain packages that we do that. So you'll see that actually on finish line. Let's see. Let me go to a better project like Arrow. Yeah. So you see they have all these different. This is our custom Kanban board because everybody loves a good Kanban board. But I can edit these orders, but I was lazy and didn't actually save them in the database. So when I refresh, they're back to what they were originally. But yeah, the things that do get saved though is like what state they're in. So backlog or in progress. And those will stay when you refresh. So that's key. If you want something to persist longer than your current session, or as long as your current refresh, you need to store it in your database. So yeah, you would, if you just had a front end app, you literally wouldn't be able to do something like that. And that very simple item, unless you were storing it in localhost, in your local storage. But then if somebody ever cleared their cookies, they would lose all their ordering. So yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, then I guess your last assignment would be to finish abstract the create for your experiences. Once you're finished with that, make sure to upload your code to your GitHub. People know how to do that. I guess that's one thing. You guys have all been working together, so I don't know if any of you know Git yet. You were able to clone your repo, but do you know about like committing code and pushing it and whatnot? Okay, I see nods. If not, it's very, very straightforward. You'll pick it up quick. Other than that, let's assign teams. I'm gonna stop recording.